Good evening. For those who don't know me, my name is Patrick Reilly. I'm John Reilly's oldest son, and wanted to welcome everyone out tonight. I know that under the circumstances that are never good, but especially under the current circumstances, it we would have expected it to be a little more well attended. But thank you guys for being here. I know for everyone here, Dad meant something different and something great. So I can't thank everyone enough for being able to make it out and pay respects to him. It's a privilege to be able to preside or officiate or otherwise administer the service for Dad. But be that as it may, if right now I'd like to invite my brother Kevin up for the formal reading of the obituary.
Captain John Francis Reilly, U.S. Air Force retired, 73 of Fairborn, passed away in his sleep at Kettering Medical Center on Sunday morning, April 26, 2020. He was born in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania on April 17, 1947, the youngest son of the late Patrick and Mary Reilly. He was a graduate of Philadelphia's Cardinal Doherty High School and the University of Nebraska, Omaha. John served with and retired from the United States Air Force for 23 years, but continued to serve as a civilian employee long after his military retirement. During his tenure with the Air Force, he distinguished himself on both an enlisted airman and later as a senior non-commissioned officer with the Strategic Air Command. He would later commission as an officer after the successful completion of his degree at officer training school, a logistics officer, and then a civilian contractor officer with the U.S. Air Force Materiel Command. He was proudest of his work as a master cartographer with the Strategic Air Command. His passion for the map making earned him numerous commendations, and his work undoubtedly helped to ensure the safety of the citizens of the United States.
This is easier to read.
Yeah, that's all right. John was a camping and scouting enthusiast, a love that he installed into not only his children, but also a generation of scouts, many of whom have gone on to serve as scoutmasters themselves. John was also an avid, lifelong sportsman, having been a Philadelphia youth tennis champion and later a coach and mentor for his children's soccer and baseball teams. He was a big fan of any teams in which his children were playing on, but he was known to cheer most vigorously for the Green and Knights soccer and Ohio University rugby programs. He was perhaps an even greater fan of his daughter's culinary skills and was known to lavish well-earned praise upon her delicious meals. John loved his life and was known to have wisecrack jokes, witticisms, and kind words at the ready for everyone, family, friends, strangers alike. He is survived by and will be sorely missed by his great love and longtime partner, Janet Miller. His children, Katie and Raymond Luna of Sahuarita, Arizona, Allison, Todd, Jordan of Enon, Ohio, Kristen and Chris Miller of Christiansburg, Charlotte, North Carolina, and 13 grandchildren upon whom he doted unfailingly. Sorry, Pop. Sorry. Oh, he would appreciate that one. Yeah, I think that's it.
It's hard to eulogize Dad. Not because there aren't any nice things to say, but possibly because there are far too many. It'd be difficult to distill all the good things into so short a time, but I'm going to give it a shot. But think about how many times that how many times he'd made you laugh, said something profound, given good advice, or shown up at just the right time. So, I blame Dad. He did this too. I think I can speak for everyone when I say that that'd be too many to count. That said, when I was tapped to do this, a few things sprang to mind, and I wanted to commit them to paper so I could share with them. A few examples of everything that of many of the things that Dad was able to do to impart morals and wisdom that he was so generous to share. The first story that came to mind was a basketball practice that we were at the church, and he came to pick up Kevin and I after the basketball practice was over. We were shooting around at the end of the basketball practice, and he walked in and he calls over to one of us for the ball, and he bounces it once, standing in the corner of the court, heaves a full court shot, swishes it, and says, "See you in the car." And to the great amusement of all of our teammates and Kevin and I especially, he later confided in me that he as soon as he got out of sight, he fairly skipped to the car with a huge smile on his face, but he didn't let on about that until much later. So, the moral of the story there is that he would rather be lucky than good any day. The second story that I thought of was when he was deployed to Egypt. This kind of encapsulated Dad in a nutshell. He was deployed to Egypt's Peace Vector 2 program with the United States Air Force in 1985, excuse me. He spent time in Cairo and Beni Suef, Egypt, and in the early to mid 80s, the government had procured and at great expense a bunch of IBM computers for the use of the airmen during the Peace Vector program. So when those arrived, Dad and his customary tech savvy ability unboxed them, studiously put them together on the desk, put the computer together and plugged it into the wall. Unfortunately, the screen brightened and brightened a little bit more, popped, and then he was able to detect the acrid smell of burning electronics, having forgotten that while the IBM computers ran on 110 volt, the Egyptian power grid ran on 220. His comrades were panicked, and having watched Dad brick a very expensive piece of government equipment, but he simply shrugged and stated, "If Uncle Sam is going to get mad at me for doing something that I've done for the better part of my life, I'm working for the wrong person." So, Asif, which means sorry in Arabic, hence earning them the nickname Captain Asif, or Captain Sorry. Then the last story that came to mind was in the summer of 1989. My mom, Kevin, Katie, and I had gone on a cross country trip to California to visit family, and we would eventually link up with Dad in California for a trip to Disneyland that we all enjoyed. The point of the story, however, was not so much the trip to Disneyland or what happened in California, but after Dad got home, we still had a long drive ahead of us. Mom and Kevin, Katie, and some other family and I. But Dad flew home as he was required to continue work at Wright Pat. My mom had a vegetable garden that she took rather great pride in. And she also enjoyed having us go out and pick the weeds and pick the green beans and the like. But it was not so softly whispered that Dad hated the garden and almost everything about it. In particular the weeding and pulling of the beans that he didn't particularly care for. He was out mowing the lawn. And he confessed that as he grew nearer to the garden, the temptation to veer the riding lawnmower into the garden grew ever stronger until finally he veered directly into the garden and mowed everything except for the tomatoes into the ground, because he like us enjoyed the tomatoes. So. Couple of lessons learned there. Don't do that, number one. Number two, it's always easier to beg forgiveness than to ask permission in the first place. And finally, that we need to learn to cut out the extraneous things in life and leave standing only the important things. And I think that Dad did that in spades. Also, Dad was kind of a voracious reader. As such, he gravitated toward, when he discovered it, a book by a man named Khalil Gibran, a book called The Prophet. And I'd like to invite my sister up to read a passage from that.
Then Almitra spoke, saying, "We would ask now of death." And he said, "You would know the secret of death, but how shall you find it unless you seek for it in the heart of life? The owl, whose night-bound eyes are blind unto the day, cannot unveil the mystery of light. If you would indeed behold the spirit of death, open your heart wide unto the body of life. For life and death are one, even as the river and the sea are one. In the depth of your hopes and desires lies your silent knowledge of the beyond, and like seeds dreaming beneath the snow, your heart dreams of spring. Trust the dreams, for in them is hidden the gate to eternity. Your fear of death is but the trembling of the shepherd when he stands before the king, whose hand is to be laid upon him in his honor. Is the shepherd not joyful beneath his trembling that he shall wear the mark of the king? Yet is he not more mindful of his trembling? For what is it to die but to stand naked in the wind and to melt into the sun? And what is it to cease breathing but to free the breath from its restless tides, that it may rise and expand and seek God unencumbered? Only when you drink from the river of silence shall you indeed sing, and when you have reached the mountaintop, then you shall begin to climb. And when the earth shall claim your limbs, then you shall truly dance."
I think I know that everybody in here has some memory that of Dad, some anecdote, some funny story where where he made you laugh, or again imparted some sort of lesson or wisdom or insight that maybe we hadn't thought of before. So if anybody would like to come up and share that, I'd like to invite you up to do that. It's if you'd like to do that, we'd be happy to have you share that. And if not, that's understandable as well.
Well, then you should have just let me stay up here. Dad used to say the plan is there is no plan. I love that most of the time. If there's no plan, no agenda, then that means there's no expectation and no letdown if things don't go accordingly. Things this trip have not went accordingly. Things in the world are not going accordingly. But even though things aren't the way that they normally would be in these circumstances, I never felt panicked about it. This room is full of memories within each of our hearts that we could go on and on about for hours, months, and even years. And we will. But today I'm thankful that together we get the chance to share a few of those. Some heroes wear capes, and some wear their heart on their sleeves, and that was my dad. He always knew just what to say. Some of our best talks were over breakfast. He would leave super early in the morning before I was up, go to Young's Jersey Dairy or the Carriage Inn, and then he would come home, wake me up, and take me back with him to get breakfast and have one of his famous talks. He was the best storyteller. Sometimes I would bring up something to trigger him to tell a specific story, because they never seemed to get old, no matter how many times I heard them. Some of my best memories were going to the Miami Valley Dinner Theater. We saw so many musicals together. My Fair Lady, Annie, Cats, and my favorite, Ray Charles. He instilled a love for the fine arts and music. Even if you ever heard him sing, you'd know he couldn't carry a tune in a bucket. I could go on and on about our impromptu trips to the Super Playground, the Air Force Museum, Elsa's, Dayton Bomber hockey games, and camping at John Bryant. But there isn't enough hours in the day. Dr. Seuss said, sometimes you will never know the value of a moment until it becomes a memory. How right he was. And so until we meet again, Daddy-O, I'll hold you in my heart.
Please.
I could tell more than a couple, but I think we'll just leave it at two and let it go at that. I've known John and Janet for a long time. I'm president of the Enid Eagles. My name is Larry Spicer, and I remember a couple in particular. They came in one night, and Janet went out on the deck to smoke and to talk. And John wasn't quite ready yet, so he sat down by me, and he said, Janet's mad about something. And he said, I'm not sure what it is. And I said, that's kind of hard to believe, John, because you're probably the reason why she's mad. And he said, well, you're smarter than I thought you were. I said, well, thanks a lot. And so at any rate, he said, I don't know, but he said, I don't know that I want to have her sit here and gripe at me all the time or whatever. So we were fairly crowded, and somebody came in, and they said, is there anybody sitting there? And John said, well, I think she left. And of course, the she was Janet. So obviously when Janet came back in, she didn't have the seat that she thought she had, because John didn't lie. He just said that he thought she left, and the person sat there. So I'll never forget the look on Janet's face, because it was like, I said, well, John, I hate to tell you this, but if you thought she was mad before, I don't think you need to ride home with her if you came together. And that's one story. And then, you know, John was very interesting to listen to when he was talking. And of course, he had a plethora of stories because he had had a lot of experience and what have you. And one particular night, he was sitting, and Terry O'Brien, who was here earlier, was sitting very close to us, and he started talking, John that is, and he kept talking and talking and talking, and so finally they were ready to leave, and he said, "I'll see you later." I said, "Okay." And Terry said to me, "Did you have any clue what he was talking about?" And I said, "Well, I got parts of it, but I didn't understand a lot of it." I said, "I just was sort of polite and listened and shook my head every now and then, hoping he didn't say anything that I agreed to that wasn't good." But I said, yeah, it was kind of, you know, all over the place, and I'm not really sure what his intention was or whatever. So I remember the next night, John came in, and Janet was busy talking to somebody, and he said, "What'd you think of that conversation that I had with you and Terry last night?" And I said, "Oh, it was all right." I said, "You know, that's why people come in here, to talk and have fun and what have you." And I said, "You know, I know you had reasons for talking, so that's okay. I was happy to listen. I'm sure Terry was." And he said, "Well, I'm glad you knew something about it, because I sure as the hell didn't know what I was talking about." I said, "Well, you know, we did think it was kind of all over the place, but by the same token, you know, you're a friend, so we listened." But, I mean, that was John in a nutshell. John could be ever so serious, and, you know, all of a sudden you would be in the serious intention, and he'd drop a bombshell on you that would make you almost fall off of the chair laughing. And, you know, that was the way John was. You never knew for sure until he had gone on for a little while whether he was talking about something that he was very serious about, or whether he was talking about something that was designed to make you kind of listen intently with the idea that he could drop the bombshell. So, good man, no question about it. Loved the fact that he had served. Loved Janet and her family as well as his own. Talked about him a lot, but usually not when they were around. He really hardly ever said anything about Janet in her presence that I knew of. But when she was not around, he praised her quite a bit. And I know Janet stuck by him a long time and what have you. And you know, John was pretty bad illness-wise for quite some time ago, and people were predicting at that point that his days were numbered, but he survived and lived a long time, which I think is nothing more than a testimony to the perseverance that he had as an individual. So it's been my pleasure to know him and to know Janet and him as they have visited the Enid Eagles, and certainly we will miss him, no question. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. If,
And by the way, I did know what I was talking about, in case
um, if there's nobody else, I guess we just have a final few words, and those are of thanks, not only for. Did you want to tell us? Please. Come on up. There you go. Stand right here.
I remember the one time where we were at Elsa's.
There you go.
My mom, Nanny, my sister-in-law. We had a fun time. Half a dog with it. Kind of. Just And he was funny, of course. He was being very funny, like always.
Okay. There you go, right here.
Well, so I don't remember this time, but I saw a picture at home of me, Emily, Papa John, and Alyssa. I saw it on my mom's desk. Then I told Mom that now we can remember all about Papa John. And then it made me really happy.
Take the time to listen and educate our patients about the best treatment options for conditions such as low testosterone, ED, and it's important conversation, not just with any doctor, but with the urologist.
So, in
Sounds like John then.
in true John Reilly form, technical difficulties have stolen the show, and I would like to think that the dad had some part to play in that. But thank everyone for coming out. I know there are a lot of people that are tuning in from around the country. I know there are a lot of people who weren't able to be here in person. I know that Lauren and Mike are here in spirit. I remember Dad taking such good care of Lauren as she was in the hospital. She would read. Dad would actually read from the prophet to Lauren when she was convalescing after an accident, and I think Dad would definitely have enjoyed the last two speakers as much, if not more, than anybody else, because the unvarnished and innocent opinion and amazing spirit of the kids is appreciated. So thank you. That being said, again, thank you for coming out. We'd like to, in good Irish tradition and fashion, read not only a toast to Dad, but share a libation in his honor. So anybody who's interested in that, we'll be able to do that here in a second. So, anybody who would care to partake, please come on up. Thank you. Thanks, bud.
Thank you.
Yep, need a couple.
How many?
Pour 3.
It was the music that did it.
Can't help.
That had to have been Dad.
Especially talking about like erectile dysfunction.
Yeah.
It wasn't just like the
I
song.
know.
It was like,
All right.
you couldn't have done any better than that.
There are two toasts that the Dad was fond of. One being the Irish prayer, which I always consider more a toast. So, May the road rise to meet you. May the wind always be at your back. May the sun shine warm on your face. The rains fall softly upon your fields. And until we meet again, may God hold you in the hollow of his hand. And the other being, may those who love us love us. May those who don't love us, may God turn their hearts. And if he can't turn their hearts, may he turn their ankles so we might know them by their limping. Remember the man. Dad. Sláinte. Thank you.
Get rid of these classy solo cups.
So, in conclusion, I suppose I'd like to offer just a word of prayer to send everybody home. Unless of course, as chaplain, you'd care to offer the word of prayer.
Well, I say I used to be a man of the cloth because the first 2 years I was chaplain, but I've been president for 24, so I don't know. I like the Lord's Prayer myself. If you have something else in mind, that would be fine.
I'll just offer kind of a benediction as best I can. Heavenly Father, thank you for this day and for all the great many blessings that we've enjoyed. Thank you for the company that came to join us. Thank you for the gift of your son and my dad, for his wit, his mirth, his spirit, his love, and his wisdom. I ask that a protective hand be laid on all of us as we depart home tonight, that we might all reach there in safety. Help us to remember Dad. And these things we do pray in the name of Jesus Christ. Amen. Thank you.